Okay, so we've established there's this like governance gap, right? It's like we're kind of playing catch up with AI.
Yeah.
But where does the UN report? Like, where does it go from there?
So they really dive into the risks, and this is where I think it gets really eye-opening, because they're not just talking about, robots taking over the world, which is kind of the
Right, which is like the
sexy headline.
sexy headline. Yeah.
It's much more nuanced than that.
Okay.
They actually break down the risks by, like, who is most vulnerable.
Oh, interesting.
So you have individuals, you have entire societies, you have the global economy, you even have the environment. So it's really about kind of understanding, like, which areas of life are most susceptible to AIs,
So AI's downside.
downsides, exactly.
That's a smart way to look at it.
And it allows for a much more targeted approach, I think, to governance, right? So, for example, when it comes to individuals, the report talks about things like privacy violations, right? I mean, imagine AI being used for mass surveillance, eroding our fundamental rights without us even really, like, realizing it.
Right. It's like that saying, you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. But it's like applied to like algorithms. Yeah, just like
sifting through our data.
sifting through every aspect of our lives. Like, and that's where I start to get like a little creeped out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure. It's like, how much do we really want them to know? And what are they doing with that information?
Exactly. And they also talk about like, the potential for AI to actually like worsen existing inequality.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is something that, I think a lot of people, when they think about AI, they don't necessarily think about that right away.
Right.
But it's
huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like how so?
Well, think about, access to things like education or healthcare or even, justice, right?
Okay.
Algorithms can perpetuate biases. They can discriminate against certain groups without even necessarily being programmed to do so.
Right.
Because
it's like that saying, garbage in, garbage out.
100%.
Like if you're
into data,
feeding it with biased data, it's going to come out.
It's going to spit out biased results.
Exactly.
And the thing is, it's not even just about what AI might do intentionally, right? It's the unintended consequences of its actions.
That we haven't even thought of yet.
Exactly, that we really need to be prepared for. And that's why this UN report really stresses the importance of things like impact assessments, and this ongoing monitoring of AI systems, because we need to be able to, like, course correct if things start heading in the wrong direction.
Right, 100%. And you had mentioned earlier, like, the environment. And I'm kind of curious about, like, what are the concerns there? Because that's something that, like, I don't know, it feels very, like...
It feels very clean. Like AI, because it's all digital wizardry. It's all ones and zeros. And it feels very... like not of this world, but it has a very real physical footprint.
Right. It has to live somewhere.
Right. Well, exactly. And the amount of energy that's required to, like, train and run these massive AI models, it's staggering. We're talking about data centers that consume as much electricity as entire cities, you know? So if we're not careful, the environmental costs of AI could very well end up outweighing, the benefits.
Right.
So that's something to really keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially we've got all these like potential pitfalls, right? We've got, the AI eroding privacy. We've got, potentially exacerbating these inequalities. And then on top of that, you've got the environmental concerns. So it's like the UN is basically saying, like, look, we've got to be awake to all these different risks if we want to harness AI for good. But it's not all doom and gloom, right? Like, they wouldn't come out with this whole report and lay out all these problems if they didn't at least have, like, an idea of what some of the solutions might be.
Right. Exactly.
So they do offer some solutions, right? Because, like, it can't be all doom and gloom. They wouldn't present us with this whole report just to say, like, hey, be scared, be very scared.
Exactly. They definitely offer solutions. In fact, the report lays out 7 concrete recommendations.
7. Yeah.
7. And what I think is really refreshing is they acknowledge there's no one-size-fits-all
Of course not.
solution.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like you can just impose one set of rules on everyone and everything's going to be hunky-dory.
Right, because the world of AI, I mean, it's so diverse. You've got different countries, different cultures.
Absolutely. Different values at play.
It's way more complex than just, coming up with one set of rules. So
way more complex.
What are they, like, how are they suggesting we approach this, like, in a more nuanced way?
Right. So they propose this more collaborative approach.
Okay.
And they even give it a name, a networked institutional approach. which, again,
Sounds a little jargony.
a little jargony, but we can unpack it.
I'd love back it, yeah.
So think of it like a web, right? Where you've got all these different actors, governments, international organizations, research institutions, even private companies, all playing a part in shaping the future of AI. The idea is no one entity, no one group holds all the answers.
Right. It's more like a global brainstorming session than like a top-down decree, basically.
100%. And within this network, this web of actors, they actually propose some really interesting concrete steps.
Okay, like what?
So one of the big ones is an international scientific panel on AI.
So like a global brain trust.
Exactly, like a global brain trust focused on AI.
Oh, that's cool.
It is cool. Think of it like the panel on climate change, but for algorithms. The idea is they would give unbiased, science-based advice to policymakers all over the world to help them make more informed decisions about AI.
So they're kind of like cutting through the hype and the fear-mongering that tends to surround AI.
Exactly, because there's so much of that it's really hard to like sort through and be like, okay, what is actually like a legitimate concern?
Right, what's real?
What are we really worried about here? And I think having a body that can provide that kind of like neutral, objective, science-based assessment is going to be really, really crucial moving forward.
Totally, totally. So it sounds like, I mean, to me, like one of the big takeaways from this report is just how important it is to like stay informed, stay engaged, like
Yeah.
this is not something that we can just kind of like bury our heads in the sand about.
100%. And I think one of the best things that, our listeners can do is actually read this report for themselves.
Yeah.
It's available online, it's free.
Yeah, we'll link to it in the show notes, of course.
Absolutely. And just like take some time to really, familiarize yourself with like the key arguments, the recommendations, because, the future of AI, it's not predetermined. It's something that we're all shaping, right here, right now through the choices that we make,
100%.
the conversations that we have, the questions that we ask. It all matters.
Absolutely. Well, hey, that's what we've been trying to do today with this deep dive, right? Like we've unpacked the UN's recommendations, we've explored those risks, we've, taken a look at some of the potential upsides and downsides of AI, and hopefully you listening, you feel a little bit more equipped now to kind of navigate this complex landscape that is, artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you only remember one thing from today, remember that the future is not set in stone. We all have a role in shaping what the age of AI is going to look like.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, keep those sources coming and we'll keep diving deep.